Hello, fifth graders. In the mail, you should have received a packet of materials from me. And in that packet of materials are some things you're going to use today to do your art assignment, okay? The first thing I want you to think about though is how you might make a cube. We're going to be doing some three-dimensional forms, and a cube is the first one we'll start with. And one of the materials you'll use from that packet is a file folder. It looks like this, folded in half in your packet when I mailed it. This is going to be the main material that you use to make your cube and several other forms after that. And you'll also use the masking tape that I sent you to tape everything together, okay? In order to make your cube, you're going to need one of the tracers that's in the tracer envelope that came with your materials, okay? And hopefully, if you're thinking about a cube, your brain would think that might require a square. So the template or the tracer you're going to need is the square from your tracer envelope, okay? And what I'd love for you to think about for a moment is how could you take this square and this file folder and turn it into a cube? Some of our friends here have talked about using this square a particular number of times because a cube has a certain number of faces or sides on it. And if you're calculating in your mind, you might come up with the number 6, which is the number of squares it takes to create a cube, okay? Some of our friends here have discovered that if you line those squares up in a particular order, instead of cutting everything out and taping every one of your edges together, you can actually fold some edges and save yourself a little bit of cutting and taping time. So there's an arrangement that I'm going to show you here on the whiteboard that you can use if you'd like to at home when you're tracing that square onto your file folder to cut out and create your cube. Our friends have talked about putting 4 squares together in a row like that, and then adding one on the right side and one on the left side, okay? And if you cut out all the way around the outside edges of that shape, and instead of cutting on the folds, let me turn these into dotted lines real quick so you can see this maybe a little bit better yet. Those dotted line areas, instead of cutting those, you can fold on those dotted lines. So I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. But before I do, I'd like you to think about one thing. Could you take this square and instead of tracing it right here, could you trace it here? Would you still get a cube when you fold it together? If you're thinking yes, you are correct, because this square would fold up to make this side if it's in the position that it's in right now. If we moved it down here, it would fold up this way, but when this square folds up, it would still be in this same position. Even though it didn't start right here, it started right here, it would end in the same position on our cube. The same is true if you take this square and instead trace it here. Or take this square and instead trace it here. Could you take this square and trace it over here instead? The answer to that question is no, because if you put this square instead over here, when you fold this cube together, you're going to have 2 walls, like a double wall or a double side right here, and nothing over here. This side would be empty or open, which means you would have something that looked like a cube, but it would have a double fold on the bottom and it would not have any top. So as long as these 2 squares are traced, one on the left and one on the right of the column of squares that you start with, you can put those anywhere on those sides, okay? Let's have you pause the video and get your file folder out and your square and trace those onto your file folder. Trace your square onto your file folder so you have that set up and ready to cut, okay? And then before you cut, I'd like you to start the video again so that we could talk a little bit about the cutting and the taping. Thanks so much. Welcome back, boys and girls. You want to cut neatly after you trace neatly to get your cube set up to look like that. So it's cut out all the way around the edges. And then the next step is going to be to fold right on those other lines, okay? So I'm going to take a moment to fold this cube on those lines. And when you fold there, you want to press that, but I like to even just run my fingernails across there so that you have a nice, strong crease right there on each edge. And you'll want to do that for each line. When you're folding, fold right on the line. Like look right at the line. Make sure you're folding it right on the line, okay? Oops, that one just about got off on me there. The more neatly you cut and fold your cube, the better it's gonna work when you start to tape it together. So it's worth taking a little time to make sure this part is nice and neat. All right, I've got 2 more folds. Don't forget this one, okay? It would be that one right there. Don't forget that one. Sometimes people forget that one and they don't fold it, and the cube gets a little curvy in that spot. It's tricky to get it to stay together. All right, so I've got all of my folds now. Got all of my folds done, and you can see, hopefully, if I can get this cube to behave, you can see that this folds up really quite nicely into a cube. And the next step is going to be to tape it all together. You're going to want to tape all of the edges that have to be attached to each other really well. You do not have to tape the edges that are already folded, okay? So you don't have to worry about those. Those are already kind of sealed because they're folded. But you are going to tape all the other edges that join one another, okay? Your masking tape, I would recommend cutting or tearing a piece of masking tape that is about the same length as one of your edges, okay? So you can cut or tear a piece of masking tape that's about the same length as one of your edges. And then I would have you put that onto one of the edges that you want to start working with, okay? If I stick that masking tape half onto that edge, I'm hoping you can see that in the video, I don't have to hold it anymore. I have 2 hands free to hold the other parts of my cube together, line them up really neatly so that I don't have to be holding the masking tape also at the same time. So I'm gonna take this other side now and line that up. Let me see if I can show you that here. Line that up neatly, and then just take one of my fingers and press that tape over in that spot right there, and then squish it down real well. And that edge is now taped together really neatly, which is exactly what you'll want, okay? You'll notice that my tape did not look like this. If this happens to your tape, see if you can undo it, okay? See if you can kind of carefully peel it apart. And if you can, and if you think you can use it, great, go for it. And if you can't, if it's still squishy and squashy, just put it in the garbage. I sent more tape than you need for this project, so it's okay if you have to throw a few pieces away and just try it again so you have a nice smooth piece of tape. You'll want to tape all the edges, like I mentioned, that come together, okay? Do that nice, neat taping work on all the edges. If you get an edge taped, but there's just a little bit of space by a corner, go ahead and put a piece of tape over that also, okay? And then you'll want to squish your tape down really well. I'll show you what I mean by that. When you put your tape onto your form, onto your cube or other forms, we're gonna make more than one, sometimes it's like bulged up just a little bit. Can you see that there, how it's not really attached all the way? You wanna make sure that you press that down so that it's well sealed, okay? I'm not sure if we'll get to paint these at home, but if we did get to paint them, you would want all those edges nicely sealed so that the paint wasn't trying to creep in and like warp your paper, okay? Warp your file folder. For your assignment this week, I'd like you to trace and make a cube, okay? So you'll trace your 6 boxes, cut them out, fold them together, tape them together neatly, and then take a picture or two of your cube and send that in as your assignment for this week, okay? We're gonna make a cube for this week. Great job. Thanks for your hard work.